All right, so today I'm here with Imana Cordova. She's a client who came to us who was suffering with problems with vertigo and had the problem was since September, and it's now February, and so that was a number of months that you were suffering with the problem. Tried different treatments, tried different things, and nothing seemed to work. And then you came to us. Could you tell us a little about what you were suffering with and how the symptoms come on, and could you tell us about the story a little bit?
Okay, back in September of 2020, what happened was I wanted to climb up on a chair to put something up on a bookshelf. So I was in a hurry, and the chair I selected was like this leather slung chair I had a folded blanket on it. And so I climbed up on it, and when I climbed up on it, the blanket slipped out from underneath me, and I catapulted over the backside of the chair. Chair's still standing, but I went flying over the backside. And I landed on the backside of my head. That was the first thing to hit the floor. And I knew from that I would need to go to emergency. So I did go to emergency. And they said I had a concussion and that I would need to go see a neurologist. So I did go see the neurologist, and he checked me out, and he didn't see any problems. So what I was experiencing after the fall, though, was I had that dizziness come up, a dizziness and a whooshiness, and I was unable to look up or down. And I couldn't turn my head from side to side. I could only do that to about here, and here, and that was all I could do. Unfortunately, in my past, I've had these a few accidents where I've had head blows, and so the last time that I had a bad one, I ended up going to an ENT doctor, and the when I went to the ENT doctor, not only did it not change anything, it made it worse. Mm-hmm. And somebody gave me a referral to a physical therapist that dealt with this kind of problem. So I went to that physical therapist, and they were able to correct it. So I knew that I needed to get to a physical therapist. In my mind, that was what I was going to do. That it had more to do with calcium carbonate crystals in here for balancing in my ears, that they had been knocked out of place and needed to be treated. So I found a physical therapist and went to them. I probably had about 15 visits or so. Mm-hmm. They'd do a treatment, and then it would just still be way off, so I felt like I wasn't functioning. So they recommended that I come back. So whether it was a day or 3 days or a week or so, I would drive all the way out there, and not close to home. And I would drive all the way out there, and they would treat. So I think finally I decided that the therapy with them was not working. Mm-hmm. And that's when I sought you out, because I knew that you had that experience, and I was able to thankfully find you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is a very common story, unfortunately. So, head injuries are a common way to get vertigo. And we see that all the time. And then a very common story of went to the emergency room, whether it was a head injury or whatever mm-hmm. cause, went to the emergency room, saw a neurologist, mm-hmm. saw an ear, nose, and throat doctor. Very common story that we hear. They'll go to those specialists. And oftentimes with vertigo and other dizziness and vestibular problems, people don't find the right solution going down those routes. Mm-hmm. In this case, you end up with a physical therapist who is supposed to be a specialist in it, still is taking 15, 16 visits. And oftentimes we find that's the case because even vertigo, which is, I would say, the most clear-cut inner ear balance problem, is still not clear-cut and can be difficult to treat. Could you tell us a little more about the symptoms you're experiencing at the beginning? Just kind of explain the vertigo a little bit more and how you were suffering with the problem.
Okay. In my past, I've had experience with dizziness where the room was just spinning. And this was different from that. I just had all kinds of sensations, like it totally affected my whole body. So I had the inability to move left or right or look up or look down without feeling kind of this like a whooshiness inside my head. And another interesting sensation, it felt like I had an object in my head. So if I should turn to the right, my head was moving, but the object in my head was lagging behind the movement.
Interesting.
So it was just such an effort to move in any direction. So I got really limited to protect myself. I just kept looking straight forward. When I did take walks, but I had to be really aware of where I was walking. It felt like I had to be acutely aware of how I was walking because everything was off. And my body got really heavy so that in the morning, when I tried to get up in the morning, I couldn't get up. I'd take forever just to come to a sitting position. It just felt like my body was super heavy. And then I'd have to go take a hot shower because I'd been in a limited position that I slept in. I couldn't sleep on my right side, and I couldn't sleep on my back. But I could sleep on the left side, and that was okay. And I did choose, it seemed like I was better if I slept up on pillows. And whether or not that was really helped or not, in my mind it did. So I was just up on a bunch of pillows. So on top of, all the other stuff that was going on, I had the problem with, my neck was getting all bent out of shape from sleeping up on pillows at night. So that's basically it. And then I would just have if I looked down, I got dizzy. If I looked up, I got dizzy. And then if I looked right, I got dizzy. And if I looked left, I got dizzy.
So we were experiencing this mix mash of very typical textbook symptoms and not so typical, right? So it wasn't the true vertigo spinning that you've experienced in the past when you have had vertigo. And as I understand, you were treated successfully in the past for vertigo. And so you have that typical spinning sensation, but in this case, not necessarily. It's just that dizziness. It's the thing, something is just off. And then we hear all the time from people very... a variety of symptoms, right? So like there's something else in your head, but then, that's trying to keep up with you. We'll have people talk about various pain in their head or all sorts of different symptoms. There's very random or thought process problems and things like that. And this mixture of symptoms makes the vertigo even more complicated to figure out. And it's one of the reasons why people suffer so much with the problem is the symptoms can be all over the place. In this case, different from what you had experienced from a number of years prior when you had vertigo, and now, but you still knew it was vertigo. Is the interesting part. You knew it was the crystals in the inner ear that were causing the problem, and now, the symptoms were different in this case. So the dizziness when bending down and looking up, the problem on one side lying down but not the other side lying down, so a very mixed variety of very typical textbook symptoms and not so textbook symptoms, which is interesting. So tell us a little bit more about the as you were trying to seek a solution, what road bumps were you running into?
The roadblocks. I had a lot of roadblocks. In the past, that's where I really hit the roadblocks. And I would go to a regular doctor, and even this time I went to a regular doctor, my primary care. And the idea, I said it wasn't working. When I called her and I said, this is not working. And she said, well, you just need to find another doctor. And where I knew she was going to go with that was what she was pushing before. After my fall, I went to see her. She said to go to an ENT. And from experience, I didn't want to go to an ENT. And I knew that I wanted to go to a physical therapist. So I did return to the same place that I had a successful experience with, and that therapist is no longer there. So I had another therapist, and I think that they had like I was talking about, that they had some of this experience. They were trained in it, but it wasn't working.
Right.
It just wasn't working. So I think when I came up, I finally decided that, okay, this is the end of September, and now this is February. I think it's time to get another person. And I thought you had, I knew of you, and I thought you had moved on to probably another state or something. And then I just decided just to look you up online, and there you were in Dallas. So, so there you go. I was very fortunate to be able to find you again.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. And what we want to do is provide just consistent specialists who are able to serve the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so people know where to go with these vestibular problems. So there's a consistent place that consistently has a specialist that can serve this area, whether it's me or any of our other therapists. We can consistently help people out at the same level. And what ended up happening kind of from a more clinical perspective with you is you are being treated. So there's basically 6 canals total. So if you think about the inner ear balance organ, if you think about back to elementary school biology, right, where they showed you that snail looking thing, right, and said, okay, this is how you hear and all this stuff. Okay. But they don't often go into how the inner ear helps us balance, right? They might mention it, but they don't talk about it a whole lot. So if you think of a snail, and in the body of the snail are those calcium carbonate crystals. So we all have rocks in our head. My wife tells me I have rocks in my head all the time, right? And those rocks are supposed to be in the body of that snail. And what vertigo is when those rocks get into a place where they're not supposed to be. So also connected to the body of the snail are basically 3 tubes. And vertigo happens when those rocks get into the tubes, and they're not supposed to be there. The tubes serve a purpose, but they're not supposed to have rocks in them. And that's when people get vertigo. So then the rocks get in the tubes, and it sends an unnatural signal to our brain. And then usually it's the spinning sensation, and that's a true vertigo symptom, the rotational spinning. But people can also get, vague dizziness, lightheadedness, just general unsteadiness. Even their thought process and their cognition can change. All these kind of random symptoms. I call it the elephant in the room that nobody can see, right? And so on top of all this, so not only do those rocks get into those tubes, there's 3 tubes on each side of our bodies, because there's an inner ear balance organ in each ear. So there's basically 2 snail-looking things in our head, one on one side, one on the other side. And so there's 6 canals that people can get vertigo in. And as a result, it makes it even more complicated to treat. In your case, you had vertigo in 3 canals, which is not uncommon. We see it often. It's not the most common, but it happens. We see it. And actually and it actually took one treatment session to even bring out one of the canals. So we had to get your crystals stirred up a little bit to get things going, to even find out that there was a 3rd canal involved. So all to say that it is complicated, and it can be difficult to figure out. So specialists in this needs mentoring. They need constant study, and they need lots of experience to be able to see this, and lots of different. To work with a number of different people in order to be consistently successful. And that's one of the challenges in our healthcare system is the number of consistent specialists who are mentored and then trained and see vertigo and other inner ear balance problems 1,000 times 1,000 which ways. And so how did so you contacted me and we evaluated you, and how did that experience go?
Okay, so if I were to compare the experience that I had with the last practitioner that I saw, it was really different in the sense that I don't think that as much time was spent telling me about the. I'm the kind of person that wants to know what exactly is going on, particularly since I've had a bad experience with it. But to be able to have a discussion with me, what helped me was to have a discussion with me, just like you were just speaking of, about all those canals, and that's just how I benefit from hearing that. Mm-hmm. It gives me a picture of what's going on inside of my body, as if I were looking at an X-ray and you were telling me that I have a broken bone and this is what you're going to do with it, and you're going to put a plate in here, you're going to put a screw in here. To have that kind of information, first of all, is really calming, but the fact that you would take the time to do that, because I don't think that was my other experience. It was a little bit of it, but not much. And so as I went along and I didn't get any kind of, I wasn't getting the relief I was seeking, I would ask about it and I wouldn't really get an answer. What I thought was helpful from the way that you did the treatment with me is that you did this gathering of information from me, and then processing it and interpreting it back to me and telling me what it was exactly that was going on and the treatment that I needed. And you were patient enough to listen to all those symptoms as if it was not a problem to hear all that, but mm-hmm. that was part of the visit. Mm-hmm. So that would help you to help me, or just the fact that I could share that with you. That was different. When you did the maneuvers for this particular problem, you did them differently. Mm-hmm. I felt like you handled me differently, and I noticed that right away. And I thought, okay, now we're going somewhere. Mm-hmm. That's just what came into my head. Now we're going to go somewhere. Something's going to happen. Because this seems to be different. Something happened mm-hmm. when you took my head off the table off the right and took my head off. It was different, the mm-hmm. way that you handled my body. And then, of course, I got, shall I talk about the reaction I had on that visit?
Yes.
So I got sick. Mm-hmm. And that didn't happen on the other visits. And I knew that could happen because the other therapist had said someone had been sick with her that day. So I knew it was something that could happen. But somewhere in my mind, I was thinking, I need to get, this has triggered something, the start of a healing process, mm-hmm. and my body is responding. And so it took me a couple of days to get over that.
It does. Commonly.
Just not fun. And I chose to sleep sitting up because I thought that would make me feel better. Mm-hmm. But I could tell that things were starting to shift. And then this last time that you worked on me, you've worked on me 2 times, right? Just two visits? Were 2 actual...
It was 2 actual visits with treatment. And then the 3rd visit was test and make sure that it was gone. Yeah, and then I gave you exercises. Right. And then actually a lot of it was getting back to the things that you want to be able to do, because we also know that people continue to avoid everyday life, things that they want to be able to do, even after the vertigo is successfully gone. But when every time you try to do yoga, or you try to bend down and pick something up, or every time you try to lie flat on your back, the room spins, or you get incredibly dizzy, or you get sick, have that happen for 6 or 7 months, and then all of a sudden be told by somebody, oh no, it's fine now. That's a very hard sell for people oftentimes. And we see that a lot. Yeah. So often I like to give people in a controlled way the things that they want to be able to do again. So the last treatment that you and I did was, confirmed, you have no vertigo. Even though you were still kind of had some symptoms here and there. So I gave you inner ear balance exercises that you now do on your own, once or twice a day. And then in that, we included just simple things like lying down to sitting on the edge of the bed. You have a yoga routine that you usually like to go through. And so in order to get back to yoga, I just had you do it faster than you normally would, to be able to expose your head to the movements that it'd been avoiding for 6 or 7 months. Because every time you would move your head in those ways, the crystals move, you get the symptoms, you feel horrible, and you don't do it, you avoid it. And that's the most natural thing in the world. So then a part of that is the getting people back to what they want to be able to do. In your case, it was yoga. You want to be able to hike. You want to be able to, just live your life and feel normal again, right? So do you feel normal again at this point?
Yeah, I do, because after you gave me the exercises for now that the vertigo is gone, I did those. And how many days has it been? It's just been been about 3 days.
It's about 3 days.
It's just been 3 days. So the last 2 nights I've been able to sleep on my back. That's the first time since September. I was able to sleep on my right side since September. I'm able to just walk, and I don't feel like I've got like I'm carrying a weight. I mean, just that's figuratively, but carrying a weight on my back, and it's really a weight on my head. I don't have that. And so, that feels like a miracle. And I know that it isn't. It's a miracle I found you. But doing, in my mind, the way that I reason this out is that I found somebody who had trained extensively in this and is willing to stay knowledgeable in this, in a way that it's done in a serious manner. You've done it in a serious manner. So I just felt right away that I was in good hands. And I think that's part of the healing process too, for people, for me anyway, is that I know that I can trust the person that I'm with. And so, yeah, it's amazing. But I've been suffering since September, and I'm very restricted in my movements. And I can reach down and to refill the cat dish and all that. I can kind of sort of lift my head up and go down to get it and bring it up, kind of like that. Or if I'm looking for I need to look up to get the hanger, I just kind of have to tilt my head like this and use my eyes to look up. All those adaptations that really limited my life. Yeah.
And what you're describing is very, very common. This is what we hear from people all the time. These types of movements that people do or avoid doing, holding their head steady as they go down to pick something up, but they keep looking up, or they don't allow their head to just simply go down or to look up and change a light bulb. I worked with one person who had vertigo for 35 years after a concussion in their early 20s, and could look up at, we would say after she got treated, she could look up at squirrels again for the first time in 35 years, because she avoided that movement for so long, right? Yeah. I want to get back to touch base on what you talked about before, because this is very important, the education piece of it, right? And then you had told me you slept, you would sleep sitting upright in a chair for a long time, and then from day one, very important to be able to talk through that, right? Since you were sitting upright in a chair, the question was, can I sleep on my back if I want to? What types of things can I do? Is it going to make it worse? What can I do and can I not do? And talking through that process of understanding the why, right? If we understand the why, then we know how to proceed forward. And in this case, you could sleep on your back if you wanted to. It was just going to bring on your symptoms for a temporary period of time. Now, I think you did end up staying in the chair for a while the first week or so, did you? Or did you end up sleeping on your back?
Well, what I would do after your treatment, even though you said I didn't have to do it, I went ahead and slept 2 nights up in the chair.
Yeah.
Just because I was afraid not to.
Yep.
And that's what I did after all those treatments that I had. I would sleep sitting up in a chair, and I had heard stories about people sleeping sitting up for years. Mm-hmm. And I thought, no, I'm not going to be one of those people. Right. That I will keep searching until I find the right person, because I'm not going to sleep sitting up in a chair for years.
Right.
And the thought that somebody would have to do that because of this condition, to me, is insane. That it's treatable, mm-hmm. it's fixable, and if with the right person doing the right treatment, the person doesn't have to suffer where they have to do that.
Right. And you're a seeker of alternative medicine. We've talked a lot about that, and very, very helpful. And it is like a miracle in a lot of ways, from the standpoint that, you have this horrendous condition that people suffer with all the time, and it can upend their life and completely debilitate them in some ways. And the fortunate part is there's a maneuver that specialists have been doing for decades that we know about and is effective, and is the treatment for vertigo. Even in the major medical journals, the ear, nose, and throat journals, they support, no, this is the treatment, this repositioning. You don't need medications. Stop giving medications. Right. Stop doing all these things. This maneuver is the treatment, and it's phenomenally effective. And it seems like magic, but all it is just putting the crystals out of the canal. And so it's physiological, and that's the why, right? We put the crystals out of the canals, and the body just flushes them away. We have trillions of them in our inner ear balance system. They're supposed to be there, just sometimes they get in the wrong spot. And when it happens, it completely can be debilitating, and upends people's lives. And of course, the biggest problem is it can be so hard to find the right specialist. And so that's why we're talking about this today, is to get the word out there, and promote other people become specialists in this as well, because the more specialists there are, the better, so that more people can be helped, and more easily and quickly. On average, it's about 6 healthcare providers, according to the research, that people will go through before they'll get to the right specialist. That's according to the Journal of Otolaryngology and Head and Neck Surgery. And so that's in the research, is 6 people on average. I've seen upwards of 25 people from a couple different people. So it's that's the fortunate part. This is treatable, right?
Right.
So, what are you planning on doing now that you feel normal again and you're ready to move forward, get back to hiking, getting back to yoga? Or what do you want to do?
Yeah. Okay, what do I want to do? Well, I do want to be on the. I'd like to stretch on the floor on my back. Mm-hmm. And I can do that now. Yay. And I can do, I'm not a super yoga person, but I do yoga stretches in the morning, and I can actually do the inverted position, where my head is reaching to the floor. Yay. Mm-hmm. And walking, hiking, I've been kind of avoiding some of the trails because I knew they were a little more rockier. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to feel good about that. And then I get to sleep on my right or my left or my backside. Yay. Those are just some of the things. It just feels like normalization. And I think that it's so... to me, it's so huge. And to anybody, it's like you said, it's the unseen thing. To me, it's so huge to have that imbalance going on in the ears, and nobody can see it. They can look at me and know that I'm just kind of walking around like bored, not able to kind of turn my head or anything. But to me, the whole system is off, and I just feel encumbered. The whole system feels encumbered. So now I go walking, like coming up the stairs to come in here. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to worry about, reaching for a handle. I didn't have to. I didn't have to look for a railing. I know confidently that I could come up the stairs without that. So that's normalization of my activity. And, 6 months to me is nothing compared to people doing this for years or a year or whatever, or trying to find 6 specialists or 25 or whatever. That stuff, looking for those people takes time. And it just, to me, it shouldn't be that hard. This particular treatment should be readily available to anybody so that they don't have to run to take medicines which, vertigo medicines or whatever. And if it's not the brain, the neurologist says it's not the brain, then how about it may be the crystals or in the wrong canal from the fall that you had, or the blow to the head, or whatever it is. And if it's that, to me, it's just cut and dry. It's simple. The neurologist wasn't going to be able to fix this for me, so I had to find somebody who could.
Yeah.
And 6 months was a long time to me. So I'm ready to resume regular activities.
There you go.
And do all kinds of stuff.
Yes. Because you're a regular exerciser and you like to be physically active, so it's back to yoga, back to hiking trails, and maybe getting back to traveling too, and in a few months, and get your life back, and that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah. So. Anything
else?
No, I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, thank you.
For your let me just share it because I want to. I want to say that the way that you were a professional, and the way that you choose to remain knowledgeable and do the education on this matter, and other matters too, I'm sure, it just shows. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. Well, thank you. And it's an absolute pleasure, and it's an absolute joy to be able to help people in these situations. So, and thank you for speaking with us today, and letting other people know your story so that they can get help when these things come up. So thank you so much, Imana, and we'll keep in touch soon. Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you.